If fear did not exist in your mind, who would you already be? Fear has cost you more than time. It has cost you identity, potential, and peace. But today, that ends, so listen closely, because by the time this speech finishes, fear will no longer hold the same power over you. Not because it will disappear, but because you will have changed. You will have outgrown the version of yourself that used to listen to it. What you're about to hear is not motivation. It is transformation, if you have the courage to receive it. So I ask you this now before we begin. Do not skip a word. Do not drift. Because somewhere in these next moments lies the sentence that will cut the chain. And if you miss it, you may never know what you could have become. Now lean in, silence the world, and let this be the day you kill the fear. Let us speak plainly. Fear is not merely a feeling. It is the silent enemy of success. It is the hidden architect behind the failure of most men. And until it is exposed and destroyed, it will continue to direct the course of your life while you believe that it is fate. Understand this well. Fear is not danger. Danger is real. Danger requires caution. But fear is illusion. Fear is thought, cloaked in emotion. It wears the garments of reason and caution, yet it is born in falsehood and nurtured through repetition. And most men, unaware, build their entire lives in the shadow of this invisible master. A man will not rise because he is not strong, but because he is afraid. A man will not speak his truth, not because he lacks truth, but because fear has silenced his voice. A man will abandon his purpose, not because the purpose is too great, but because fear has convinced him he is too small. Let me remind you, every failure, every retreat, every broken ambition can be traced not to inability, but to fear left unchallenged. The enemy is not outside. It is within. It is your thought, when left undirected, undisciplined, and untrained. I have seen this enemy in the eyes of powerful men, men with vast intellect, with boundless potential, yet paralyzed when a decision had to be made, men who could speak of greatness but could not act toward it, men who believed but only in silence, never in motion. This enemy does not shout. It whispers. It says, wait. It says, what if you fail? It says, you are not yet ready. And in that moment, the mind obeys. The heart retreats. The destiny dies. Quietly, without a funeral. But not every man bowed to fear. There were those who saw fear for what it was and chose to act anyway. Let us take Andrew Carnegie, a man not born into fortune, but into poverty. A man who did not inherit power, but forged it through belief. Do you think he was free of fear? But he did not obey it. When others warned him of risk, of overreach, of failure, he pressed forward. He built steel when others doubted it would last. He hired men stronger than himself. And he did it all without waiting for the comfort of certainty, because he understood fear is the tool of a man's mental enemy, and it must be disarmed before fortune is permitted to enter. This enemy must not be reasoned with. It must not be studied and examined endlessly. It must be confronted, overwritten, starved of power. And the only weapon sharp enough to cut fear at the root is truth. The truth that you are not weak. The truth that failure does not define a man, but quitting does. The truth that you are the master of your mind, not its servant. And the truth that fear, though persistent, is not permanent. I ask you again, not as philosophy, but as a demand of your soul. Who would you already be if fear held no place in your thoughts? Let that vision burn in your imagination. Let it haunt your excuses. Let it mock your hesitation. And then choose. Choose to remove the mask of fear. Choose to stop confusing it with safety. Choose to see that fear is not protection. It is prison. You do not remove fear by avoiding it. You remove it by advancing in its presence. You do not kill it once. You kill it every day. with action, with repetition, with unrelenting thought discipline. And so I give you your first command. Name the fear, confront it, speak against it, and move, even if your knees shake. Fear is loudest before you act. Once you begin, it quiets. Once you continue, it weakens. And once you complete the work, it vanishes. You must stop asking when the fear will go, and begin becoming the man who no longer listens when it speaks. Because that man, the man who moves without permission from fear, he is the one the world obeys. He is the one fortune follows, and he is the one you are born to become. Fear is not a force of nature. It is not lightning. It is not thunder. It does not fall from the sky or rise from the earth. It is planted in the mind, and like all seeds, it grows only when watered. Most men do not understand this. They believe fear is something that happens to them, as if it were outside their control. But let me say this with absolute clarity. Fear is thought, nothing more, and thought is under your command. Fear begins as a whisper, a single sentence, a flicker in the imagination. What if I fail? What if I lose everything? What will they say? And that whisper, if allowed to linger, takes root. Repeat it often enough, feed it with emotion, and it becomes belief. You begin to believe that failure is likely. You begin to believe that rejection is inevitable. You begin to believe that what you imagine is more real than what you desire. And once a man believes in fear more than he believes in himself, he is no longer moving through life. He is reacting to it. He becomes a servant to shadows. This is why I have taught for decades that the subconscious mind must be guarded like a treasury, because it accepts whatever you repeat, whether it is truth or terror, whether it lifts you or destroys you. The subconscious cannot argue. It cannot filter. It cannot say, this is irrational, ignore it. It simply receives what is spoken with repetition and emotion and makes it real. That is how fear is installed. You do not become afraid of life. You become afraid of your thoughts about life. You are not afraid of what is. You are afraid of what might be. And the tragedy is this. Most of what you fear never happens, but you suffer it as if it did, over and over again, in the realm of imagination. This is why the mind must be governed. This is why thought must be chosen. This is why you must install new beliefs with intention, or the world and your old self will install old fears by default. Now let me take you into history, and let us observe a man who lived this principle with fire, Thomas Edison. He is remembered for inventing the electric light, but what few remember is that it took him over 10,000 failed attempts to get it right. 10,000. A lesser man would have quit by the 10th. A weaker man would have concluded that failure was final. But Edison never feared failure because he never believed in it. He was not interested in what might go wrong. He was consumed by what he had decided would become reality. He said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. What power would you possess if you no longer saw failure as an enemy, but merely as a stepping stone? What would you pursue if fear no longer held space in your imagination? The answer to these questions is found not in your emotions, but in your thoughts. You must learn to think differently. You must train your subconscious like a garden, pulling out weeds before they grow into walls. The great Henry Ford was mocked for his ideas, told they were foolish, called an uneducated dreamer. He wanted to build a car for the common man, one that was simple, powerful, and affordable. The experts said it could not be done. The critics laughed, and yet he built it anyway. He faced fear, ridicule, and doubt, but he did not plant them in his mind. He knew a secret most never understand. The mind, when directed, does not obey fear. It obeys decision. He refused to entertain the fear of being wrong. He refused to install hesitation in his belief system. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. That was Henry Ford's creed, and it is a principle eternal. What you think becomes. What you repeat becomes identity. What you emotionally believe becomes fact, in your subconscious, even before it becomes visible in your results. So I ask you again, what thoughts are you allowing to take root? If they are not thoughts of power, then they are thoughts of fear. There is no neutrality in the mind. Every thought moves you closer to power, or pulls you deeper into paralysis. Let us not complicate this. Your thoughts either build your future or break it. Your imagination either serves your vision or sabotages it. And your repetition either strengthens belief or fear. This is why you must not wait to feel fearless. You must train yourself to act in fear's presence, by thinking thoughts it cannot coexist with. I move in the presence of fear. It does not dictate my movement. Repeat that aloud. Say it again until it feels like truth. Now write it down. Place it where your eyes must meet it daily. Let it become the sword that slices hesitation in half. Fear grows in silence. Fear survives in passivity. But fear cannot stand in the presence of a man who speaks power, who thinks deliberately, and who acts without permission from his emotions. Let us end with this. Fear is not external. It is not the world. It is not your circumstances. It is a mental habit, and all habits can be broken. You must decide, here and now, that fear no longer gets to live in your imagination. You must decide that your thoughts are your own, and you will train them until they obey. Because the man who commands his thoughts, he commands his destiny, and fear cannot touch a destiny that has already been claimed. Every man born into this world enters with two primal fears, the fear of falling and the fear of loud noise. All others are learned. They are installed. They are not part of your divine blueprint. They are borrowed, absorbed, taught, and repeated until they feel like identity. But make no mistake, no man is born afraid. He is trained to be. And if fear can be trained into you, it can be trained out. That is the focus of this lesson. There are 6 fundamental fears that rule the lives of most men. They appear in disguise. They wear masks. But underneath, they are always one of these 6. You will recognize them because they have likely visited you. But after today, they will no longer be allowed to stay. Let us examine each one in full with the torch of truth. 1. Fear of poverty. This is the root of all fear in modern man. It is the dread of loss, the anticipation of insufficiency, the terror of being without. But understand this, poverty is not first a condition. It is first a state of mind. You may have seen men with modest means who walk with great strength. You may have seen men of great riches who live in total fear. This is because poverty is not in the bank account. It is in the thought. It is in the constant worrying over bills, in the habit of saying, I can't afford it, in the mental rehearsing of failure before it happens. And the fear of poverty is powerful. It causes men to stay in jobs they hate. It causes artists to hide their gift. It causes entrepreneurs to self-sabotage. It causes the strong to become sheep and the talented to settle. Andrew Carnegie once told me, a man governed by the fear of poverty is a man already poor. Let me share a secret. When I began my work on Think and Grow Rich, I was not wealthy. I was not backed by abundance. In fact, I wrote many chapters in the face of mounting debt, dwindling hope, and a family who wondered whether I had lost my mind. But what I discovered was this. Wealth comes after the fear of poverty is destroyed, not before. How do you destroy this fear? You stop speaking of lack. You stop rehearsing the worst. You start declaring that abundance is created by thought and thought alone. You give value before you ask for it. And you install the belief that money obeys the clear, focused, definite mind. Edison did not begin rich. Ford did not begin rich. Carnegie did not begin rich. They began thinking richly. That is where wealth begins, and that is where the fear of poverty is defeated. 2. Fear of criticism. This fear has destroyed more dreams than failure ever did. Men will not act because they fear what others will say. They fear laughter, opinion, mockery, rejection. But here is a truth that must be engraved into your mind. No man ever changed the world who was afraid of being misunderstood. Every leader you admire was once criticized by those with smaller minds. Lincoln was ridiculed for his voice. Ford was mocked for his obsession with simplicity. Carnegie was attacked for building an empire from nothing. Even I, in my work on this very philosophy, faced attacks from the press, silence from peers, and ridicule from scholars. Yet I continued. Because when the voice within grows louder than the voices without, a man becomes invincible. You must decide, will you obey your vision or the opinion of those who do not share it? Will you allow the laughter of cowards to drown the roar of your mission? Understand this. Criticism is often a sign that you're on the edge of greatness. Most critics are not creators. They are watchers. Do not let watchers determine your destiny.